Thanks for watching. My name is Felix Haller. I'm a former manager at Bain & Company. And in this video, we're going to talk about a key ingredient to successful business presentations, focusing on the story of the presentation, the storylining process. And that is one of the secrets why some of the top management consulting presentations and effective strategy presentations are so compelling. It's focusing on the persuasiveness of the argument. How do you tell the story versus just creating the slides? And by watching this video, you're going to learn three things. Number one, why it's so important to focus on the storyline and starting with the storyline as opposed to the slide creation process. Number two, I'm going to share three tactical approaches of how you can actually create the storyline, the story process, which is using a piece of paper, writing it out in Microsoft Word, or telling it out loud and recording it and discussing it that way. And lastly, I'm going to share a great example of how Steve Jobs and Pixxar used storylining, storyboarding to create consistently high quality movies, and one of their secret sauces of why they've become so successful, especially in the early days, and got acquired by Disney. If you like this content, please watch the video all the way to the end and share any thoughts, feedback in the comment section, or like this video. First, I want to talk about why the story of a presentation is so important. The purpose of a presentation, especially more senior and important presentations, is to convince your audience of something, to convince your audience that your message and your recommendation is right. So all the slides, all the charts are there to support your argument, to support your story. And if you have a very compelling, persuasive argument, the slide creation process or the creation of the charts, the data, is usually pretty straightforward, which is why you should start with laying out your story. For example, if you tell a CEO or a business leader that you think they should sell their pet toys on Amazon, you could obviously say, hey, you should sell them on Amazon. But that's not convincing. There are a ton of questions your audience will have, such as, why should we even do anything? Why on Amazon and not other e-commerce platforms? So you need to package that recommendation in a compelling story. And so, for instance, a better story would be to say, our sales are declining. Our competitors are taking share from us. That would be the why. Like, why should we even care? Like, what's the burning platform? And so we should do something to turn around our revenues, to shore up our business. And then the answer could be, hey, we think you should sell your pet toys on Amazon for these three reasons. Number one, Amazon is a growing marketplace. Revenues are up significantly, especially in our pet toy category. Number two, there aren't a ton of competitors right now selling on Amazon, so we could potentially have a first mover advantage. Number three, it would work well with our current e-commerce site. And for all these reasons, I think we should sell our products on Amazon. So that story is more compelling than just saying, hey, we should sell on Amazon, without any reasoning and argumentation supporting that recommendation. The best way to make sure that your presentations are compelling is to have a compelling story. And that story is usually a living document. It gets refined over time. Nevertheless, you should start first. Before creating any slides, write out your full storyline. Then talk it through with your team, your supervisors, get their input, refine it, make it better, make it more compelling before you jump into the slide creation process. Unfortunately, most people do it the other way around. They start creating a bunch of slides, put information, data on a slide, and then afterwards they're trying to figure out how to tell the story. Like, how should we rearrange the slides? Which slide should come first, second? The problem with that approach is that you fit the story around the slides that you have, but you're not focusing on the most compelling story to tell. And that's the only thing that matters is, will we get our audience to change? Will we get our audience to agree with our recommendation? Versus sharing a bunch of nice slides and then creating a storyline that fits the slides but doesn't really fit the audience. So the takeaway is always start by creating a storyline. That should always be the focus of your presentation. Persuading your audience of your message recommendation through a compelling storyline. Next, I want to talk about a few specific tactics of how you can create the storyline. And the three approaches I'm going to talk about are: number one, using a piece of paper and writing it out that way. Number two, writing it out in Microsoft Word, Google Docs, in written form. Makes it a little easier to share the document and get input. And lastly, talking it out loud. The first approach is to use a sheet of paper or a couple sheets of paper and segmenting the sheet into different sections that represent slides, like I did here on this slide. Each of these boxes represent a slide, and now you can start writing out the headlines of the different slides and tell your story. And that could be, for instance, here first, our revenues are declining. Then the next slide, something around competitors are taking share. And then maybe here the solution, and so on and so on. And the great thing about doing it on a sheet of paper is that you can also quickly draw the visual here. So you could do bar charts going down, maybe here market share, stacked bar charts comparing different segments of the market. Selling on Amazon could maybe be a bullet list with like what we should do and a little bit of explanation. That way you can already see visually what the slides would look like, and it helps you to make sure that the story is compelling. Sometimes if you just tell out the story in sentences, you might not know if it's that compelling, if you have good data, etc. But this is a really good approach to create a storyline. And now when you have it on a piece of paper, you could share it with your supervisor, with your team, and you can discuss and then recreate the storyline, make it tighter, etc. Here on this slide, I created an example of what this could look like. Obviously, it would never look as crisp as on this slide. You would use pen and paper, and the purpose is not for it to be really precise. It's more to get a general idea of what the slides and the story looks like and what the supporting evidence could be. The second approach that I think is becoming more popular nowadays with people working from home, not being in the same room all the times, is to write it out in bullet form, either in Microsoft Word or like I did here on a slide. And you would just write down the bullets, how you would explain the story. Using the same example, you could say our revenues or sales are declining by 10% yearly, have been declining by 10% yearly. Competitors are taking share from us online, especially X company. Competitors are currently mostly cheap products, but they're building a brand. And the solution here, this is important, the answer is to sell our products on Amazon. And then like I said in the previous example, 3 reasons. And then maybe there's a timeline. We could sell our first products by Q1 next year. And these are the next steps, immediate next steps. And now you could obviously also, in a sub-bullet, quickly explain what the visual would look like. We stacked bar chart 2015 till 2020 with revenues, the solutions to sell our products on Amazon, maybe bullet 3 buckets with the reasons and quick explanation. And you could obviously do that for all the other ones as well. And in addition, you could put this all in a table and then potentially add the numbers, the slide numbers here, and then potentially do a little bit of a section like environment, current situation, and then maybe here solution, and maybe a last section, next steps, timeline. And you could see how this would end up being your storyline and how this makes it easier to share it virtually, just in an email or in a Word document, Google Docs, and then have somebody else comment on it, maybe change some of the wording, rearrange the storyline, how you would tell it. And that just makes it easier to erase and edit the storyline than having it on a piece of paper, sending an image via email, which is why I personally prefer doing it in Microsoft Word, in an email, etc. And the last approach to create a compelling storyline is to tell it out loud, to say it out loud. This could be in a room with the important people that will help you craft the storyline, is just to tell it out loud in, like, let's say 30 seconds, 1 minute. What are the 5, 6, 7 key bullets, key sentences that tell the story, and have then as a group refine it. That is sometimes almost better, because that's how you would tell the story. Like when you present the story, you would say it out loud, and if you're able to tell it in 5, 6 sentences in 30 seconds, 1 minute, that might lead to a very crisp presentation and also a very crisp executive summary, which is usually what especially more senior audiences really care about, is 1 minute elevator pitch that tells your story, that tells your recommendation. And if they agree with that, you don't necessarily need to go into all the details, into all your supporting slides, which is really powerful. Next, another point I want to talk about is what kind of stories there are and what are some popular structures you can use in your own presentations. While there are a variety of compelling stories, and you can always come up with your own structures, and they should definitely fit your message, your specific recommendation. One popular framework is the pyramid principle, or the SCQA, which stands for situation, complication, question, and answer, which was invented by Barbara Minto, and there's a great book called The Pyramid Principle, which explains it more in detail. What the framework basically says is you start with the situation. What are known facts, things everybody agrees with, such as our revenues are down, currently we don't have any great products in our pipeline. And next, the complication is something that changed the status quo, something that makes us to act, needing to change. For instance, competitors have entered the market with low-priced products. We're losing market share, or customers seem not to be happy with our product quality. Like things that are bad for us, that result us in requiring to change. And then the question directly flows from the complication. For instance, if the complication is competitors are entering the market with low-priced products, the question is, what should we do about it? Or how can we take back market share? And then the answer is, we should sell our products on Amazon to increase revenue and take share from other companies. And this is a very popular framework, especially for strategy presentations, for convincing the CEO, business leaders to go after something. For a lot of other presentations, you can be more creative with your structure. For instance, I think quite often a pro and con structure works well, or a this is the problem, solution. It really depends on how big and important your presentation is and what your message is. In reality, a lot of presentations are more 30-minute ones where you only bring 5, 6 slides. For those presentations, it's sometimes more important to have a good executive summary and a couple supporting slides. And you don't need a very large, intricate, and compelling storyline. And lastly, I want to talk about a great example showing how important storylining is, and especially the process of storyboarding, moving the story around, thinking about the story way before executing on the supporting evidence. And that story is by Pixxar, and how Steve Jobs and the leadership team used storylining and storyboarding, the whole process around the story, as one of their secret sauces to creating compelling, interesting, and funny movies every year very consistently. And also one of the reasons why Disney acquired them and wanted to leverage that process to also create better movies for Disney. The big difference they realized is that for animated movies, the production process, creating the scenes, is so expensive and so much more expensive than shooting a real life movie with Brad Pitt or whatever, is that they had to be really clear and crisp on the story before they go into the creation process, into the animation process. And these examples show you, either out of necessity or just appreciation for a good story, you should always focus on the story and making sure that you know what you're saying, what your message and recommendation is, and how you're actually planning on telling that story. Thanks for watching this video. I hope this was helpful. We talked about the importance of having a compelling story for your business presentations. Then we talked about 3 tactics and approaches to create the story. Number one being using a sheet of paper, sectioning it, and writing and drawing it out. Number two, using a Word document or a text document, writing out the story. And lastly, saying it out loud. And then we talked quickly about potential structures for a good story and how Pixar and Steve Jobs use storyboarding to tell a compelling story and how important that is. Way more important than the actual creation of the movie scenes, but also, in our example, creation of the slides. If you like this video and if you enjoy this content, please subscribe and hit the like button and share any thoughts and feedback in the comment section.